Tameka, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you here. Could you give us a brief introduction as to what you do and things like that, and then we can kind of dive into a little bit of the concept of marketing and stewards for the future.
Yeah, sure thing. So I do a little bit of everything, I guess. I'm a strategist by trade. So I have been doing marketing strategy in the tech industry for the majority of my career. And outside of that, I am an educator. So I teach at a business school in New York. And outside of that, I'm very deeply embedded into future studies these days, most specifically strategic foresight, which is more of the formalized study, but also just in my own private study of just how we think about the future, how people in the past thought about the future, and things of that sort. So that's me.
Fantastic, thank you. Thinking about that, what do we mean by marketers being stewards for the future? You've spoken about it a lot. Help level set me here. What does that mean, and how do you think about it?
Yeah, I think about this almost by definition, because I think when you think about stewardship, it's the notion that you are helping people mobilize themselves from point A to point B. And it's also the idea that you're providing some sort of guidance or some kind of comfort in that journey. So if you have been a passenger on a plane or on a train or a cruise ship or something like that, you've had experiences with stewards, and their entire job is to ensure that you understand, what's required of you to get from point A to point B, and they can accommodate, for various things that you may be concerned about, and just try to provide you the best experience that you can. So I think about it quite literally, because even within the marketing context, from the inception of this function, all we've ever been doing is trying to mobilize people from point A to point B. So if you're in the tech world like I am, chances are you're trying to get people to adopt a certain product, to embed a certain product into their day-to-day practice, or to replace an older, more antiquated system or product that they may be using. If you're in the services world, it's the same thing, right? So we as marketers, as a function, our entire purpose is to ensure that people have access to ideas, to solutions to various problems, that they have the willingness to try them, and that we're sort of there to kind of guide them along that through education, through persuasion when it's necessary, and then through just like ongoing learning of just not only why this particular thing matters that you're using or that you're purchasing, but what is going on in the world around you that makes this thing, ever so relevant, important, exciting, all of that stuff. That is the core of our role within the context of organizations, and even beyond that, in the context of just being a communicator.
I love that. That's really interesting way to think about it. But I feel that comes with pressure. So, and given that, content is a key driver for delivering themes and messages, and I'm ultimately there, as you say, to drive action. And the pressures that B2B marketers have on producing content pretty much almost on a daily basis. How can we start to think about the future and what needs to change in our thinking, and how do marketers balance that long-term vision of stewardship with the goals and the demands of the here and now?
Yeah, it's such an important thing, because I feel like, we're definitely all kind of in similar spaces of trying to build while climbing, right? You're trying to figure things out while you're trying to satisfy the objectives of your organization. So we're all in that boat. But what I think this allows you to do, it's actually an opportunity to just flex more of the kind of creative muscle that we don't always get to. Because the first question you need to ask yourself, I believe, in this whole concept of, futures and stewardship to the future is, do you even have an opinion or a point of view on what this world is evolving into? And the world, by the way, is multifaceted, right? So when you think about the world, you could be talking about the industry that you're in. You could be talking about consumer behaviors and the people that you serve. You could be talking about cultures and subcultures that have developed over time. You could be talking about society and societal trends and things that are driving, society forward in various ways. Do you even have an opinion about any of that? you know? And I think it's an opportunity to kind of sit and really think through just not only selling this thing and sort of getting from that point A to point B, but also doing it in a way that's very intentional in sort of crafting an idea or a picture of what you see the future being, and then using the things that you're selling to get people to that future. I think it's just an opportunity for marketers to flex that creativity that we don't always get to, because in the demand of having to create content, more often than not, that content is going to have to satisfy various degrees of a sales cycle, for example, or that content is going to have to, you know, enable a sales-driven conversation. And I get that, in that boat all the time. But how do you now, while you're doing that, how do you still create space for storytelling? How do you still create space for, you know, giving people a sense of what life could be in various capacities? You know, how do you prep both people and organizations and institutions, you know, for a future that they may not necessarily foresee? And it's not, when I think about, you know, futures work and when I think about all that stuff, it's not about being in a space of prediction, right? Like, we're not asking you to be clairvoyant. What we're asking people to do is just sort of pay attention to what are those things that are just happening. Like, what are things that you're starting to capture, you know, like what's going on with our general citizenship, you know, across the board. And that now is evolved to, I guess, be a conversation about physical citizenship. So what's going on in day-to-day life around you, but also digital citizenship. What's going on in the digital ecosystem that's kind of triggering, you know, movements in one direction or the other. Like, you really, I think as a marketer, you know, we very quickly get caught up in, you know, what's the deliverable and what's the ROI from that particular thing, or what's the campaign and what is it solving for on a, you know, on this sort of objective level. But I think this is really an opportunity to kind of weave in more around like perspectives, you know, more around opinions and informed opinions. You know, it's an opportunity to kind of be imaginative in a way that I think the function has kind of veered away from. You know, you even have instances where some organizations are not necessarily investing in marketing particularly. You know, they may be investing in things like growth, you know, or they may be investing in things like experience. All of these things matter a ton. But what I think a lot of organizations don't realize, and what marketers themselves probably don't realize, is that those are all effectively the same thing, right? If you're talking growth, you're talking strategic foresight, you're talking, you know, thinking about the future, you're talking about potential expansion of your market or expansion of the boundaries of how you previously understood your market, right? If you're talking about experience, you're talking about people, you're talking about, you know, what could somebody live in? You know, if I offered an experience end to end, what would it look like from the time they get on my website to the time that they meet me at an event, if we could ever get back to physical events, or to the point where they're interacting with me on Twitter, or they're speaking with a customer service agent. You're thinking about all of those things quite intentionally. And none of that might sound like marketing on paper, but it is essentially is marketing. And it's also futures work. It's also being imaginative, being creative, getting into a space where you're crafting a journey, you're crafting a story, and then you're getting people there through the content, through the messaging, through the campaigns that you're running.